All right, so we're recording. We're going to start with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Sutra 1.1 and 1.2. So, uh, 1 second. All right, so you see this is from Sri Swami Satchidananda, and this is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, the audio book, and we're going to listen to the recitation of Sutra 1.1 and 1.2. All right, here we go.
1.
अथ योगानुशासनम्.
Now the exposition of yoga is being made. Sutra 1, 2.
योगश्चित्तवृत्तिनिरोधः.
The restraint of the modifications of the mind stuff is yoga.
All right, so you heard the recitation of this particular sutra, Sutra 1.2, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And the translation is yoga is the restraining of the mind stuff or chitti from taking various forms, vritti. All right. So, all right. So we're going to give you an example to let you kind of get a pictorial representation of what we mean by that. So Swami Vivekananda, and you're going to hear him being mentioned a lot in this because he wrote a lot or gave a lot of talks in the late 1800s, early 1900s on what yoga is. So Swami Vivekananda gave us an example of a lake. Consider a silent lake. When we throw a stone into the lake, ripples start appearing on the surface. Until we stop throwing stones, these ripples don't let us see the bottom of the lake. So the vritti is the ripples appearing on the surface of the lake. And the regular accumulation of vritti over chitta, which is the water of the lake, makes the vision of the bottom unclear. So if you see this picture of the ripples, the water itself is the chitta, and the vrittis are the ripples in the lake. And so the chitta can be translated as mind for now, and vrittis is the ripples of the mind or the thoughts that we have in our mind. So the unclear surface keeps us from experiencing the deeper truth of self. Vritti is the fluctuations or the chattering that affects our perception or our experience of reality. Usually, vritti results or is the result of attachment, desires, and fear of the external world. So you can kind of get a picture of the definition that Patanjali gave us on what yoga is. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, or restraining the mind from taking various forms. So chitta is the subtle energy that is the substance of the mind, and therefore the mind itself. Vritti is the thought waves or mental modification. So a ripple in the chitta. Nirodha is restraint, restriction, suppression, or dissolving. And vrittis are not just thoughts. they are also impressions and impulses. So thoughts are actually the least of the modifications of the chitta. And more importantly, vrittis are the responses of the chitta called forth by external or internal stimuli. Yoga is the radical transformation of the very nature of the mind and therefore its function. So I kind of wanted to open up with that just to give you an idea of what Patanjali, or the definition that Patanjali gave of what yoga is. And so we have now hopefully a solid understanding of each of these words: chitta, vritti, nirodha. So I went through all of that. Does anybody have any questions or comments so far on what was stated?
Yes, I have some couple questions and comments. So chitta is the mind and vritti would be the thoughts, right?
Yes. So not necessarily just thoughts. So what we said was vrittis are not just thoughts, but they're also impressions and impulses as well. And the thoughts are the least of the modifications. So normally what we deem or consider a thought is really just an internal or external response to stimuli.
Okay, so it would kind of be like Pavlov's dog, whereas every time he'd ring a bell, he'd feed the dog. And so when he would ring the bell, the dog would still salivate. And so the vritti would kind of be the dog cueing that salivation, thinking, I'm about to get something to eat. That makes
Exactly. So
okay.
if you use that example, the bell was the drop in the mind or the ocean called the chitta, and the vritti is the ripple that the bell created for, which triggered the response of the salivation.
Okay. So another word for it, could we call it a reaction?
Well, reaction almost sounds like physical, and so what we're talking about specifically right now is just the mind.
Okay.
So not necessarily the physical response, not the salivation itself, but the thought that caused the salivation is the
Right.
vritti. So the thought of I'm about to get food, that is the vritti that was created by the bell. So he responded mentally, whether it was conscious or unconscious, to an external stimuli, i.e., the bell, which caused fluctuations in the dog's mind to say, I'm about to eat.
Okay, so then it would be, so then the cycle would kind of go stimulus, vritti, then reaction.
Exactly right. Because
Understand.
we all can agree that thought precedes action at this particular junction.
Okay. And now what is Narodaha? That's various forms.
No, nirodha is the restraint. So it's
Okay.
restraint, restriction, suppression, or dissolving.
Okay. Okay, understandable. All right, those are all my questions and comments. Thank you very much, instructor.
Perfect, no problem. Anybody else, questions, comments?
I had no question.
Yep.
You said that the ripples over the water keeps us from seeing the bottom of the lake, but you said it in another way in relation to the mind, like see our true.
See, it keeps us from experiencing the deeper truth of self.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else, questions, comments before we move forward?
I have a question. What's a sutra?
A sutra, we were going to go through it, but for right now, we call them thought threads. So how I kind of think of a sutra is almost like an emoji. So you know how if somebody sends you an emoji, it represents like more than just that pictorial representation. So,
Yes.
an emoji can be like laughing, but it can also be laughing at the joke, or it can be inside joke like that. Like the symbol itself contains more information than is pictorially represented. And so a sutra is the same thing, but it's just in words. So you see how just these 4 words, yoga, chitta, vritti, narodaha, we exploded all of these, all of this knowledge and information out of just these 4 words.
Yeah.
So it's just the simplest conveyance of an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're gonna
Thank you.
go through it though. Yeah, no problem. I'm just giving you a background or a foundation before we move forward, so we can kind of have an idea of where we're going as a collective. Thank you for that, though. Anybody else have any questions, comments before we move forward?
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So, what would yogas represent then? I don't know if you said it or not, but I didn't hear it.
We're gonna get to that too.
Okay, that's cool. I'll be patient then.
So yeah, this thing, yoga is chitta, vritti, narodaha. So we haven't expounded on the word yoga yet. Anybody else questions, comments? All right, move forward. So these are the 5 types of vrittis, or modifications of the mind. So the first one is called pramana, which is right cognition. So right cognition is proof of information to be valid according to our beliefs, experience, and morals. Pramana vritti of the mind lets us believe that something is firmly right. So if I hold up a pen and I say, what kind of pen is this? And you say, it's a black pen. That's right cognition, right? Because you verified it with your eyes, your senses. You can see that, yeah, this is a black pen. Make sense? So that's just super, super duper basic. All right. So the next one is called viparyaya, which is misconception. So misconception refers to the vritti when the mind gets false knowledge based on the mistake of the 5 senses. All knowledge of the external world we get through the 5 senses, and sometimes knowledge is deceptive. And so to illustrate this point, I actually have a video, and this is a very prevalent example in Indian Hindu culture, this particular example right here, but I found a video on YouTube that pretty much sums up what viparyaya is. So give me 1 second so I can go to the video. All right, here we go.
It was 6 men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall. The second, feeling of the tusk, cried, Oh, what have we here? So very round and smooth and sharp, to me 'tis mighty clear. This wonder of an elephant is very like a spear. The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, thus boldly up he spake. I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a snake. The fourth reached out an eager hand, and felt about the knee. What most this wondrous beast is like, is mighty plain, quoth he. 'Tis clear enough the elephant is very like a tree. The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, Even the blindest man can tell what this resembles the most. Deny the fact who can. This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan. The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope. I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a rope. And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong. Though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong.
All right, can we get two people to talk about what they took away from that video, please?
Peace. I took away perception was a strong plays a strong part in life, with all of them explaining how the elephant was a different thing, but at the end of the and then like they was willing to fight over it and argue about it, but they was all wrong because they wasn't able to see what truly was.
Excellent, thank you. Somebody else?
I think it was interesting that they all had the same deficit. They were all blind, so they were all relying on the same senses, but had completely different descriptions.
Exactly. So we can see how, what we think is true can be right, but it can also be wrong at the same time. So, all of them had their own idea based upon, the interaction of the senses minus the sight. So they created a picture, but that picture wasn't complete. And that, is very powerful because, I think that we as human beings or as individuals, we do that a lot. We get a little information and then we think, I got it. And it's like, yeah, you may have some semblance of truth, but it might not be the whole picture. And so I thought it was, even though it was simple and basic, it was a very profound example. And that example is very prevalent, like I said, if you study any Eastern cultures. All right, next we move on to the kalpa, which is imagination. So imagination is just a thought pattern of the past or of past or future events that do not really exist, and our mind has created a picture or a mental representation. And other synonyms for vikalpa are fantasy, daydreaming, doubt, and indecision. And so this one is actually very prevalent too because most people live in imagination. So notice we said doubt and indecision. So a lot of times we see some action that needs to be taken, but we go through all of these scenarios in our head about what could go wrong, this and that. But all of it is made up in our own mind, but we relate to it as if it's reality. And you can see how that can hinder forward progress by creating all of these scenarios, but none of them have happened yet. So the next one is sleep or nidra. Nidra is an altered state of consciousness where all five senses are dissolved into the mind and mind directs inward and we lose control over our thought patterns of the mind. And so this is a vritti because even though we aren't necessarily conscious of our perception while we're asleep, there is still perception being had. And the best example that I can give is if you walk into a dark room, the room is dark, but that doesn't mean your eyes don't work. It just means there's nothing to perceive with the eyes. So it's the same with sleep. Even though, things are happening, the mind just doesn't have anything to perceive. So it's the exact same as the eyes in the dark, nothing to perceive. Even though perception is being made, it's just nothing to perceive. And so it's the same with sleep. there is perception is just nothing to perceive, and dreams are obviously uncontrolled thoughts unless you can control. Some people can control dreams, which are people who have control of the mind. And the last one is smriti, which is memory. So memory is a lasting impression of past sensations or emotions that are stored either consciously or unconsciously by a person's mind. Patanjali explained memory is the collection of unforgotten experiences which can be both conscious and unconscious, but without adding any other characteristics from any source. So those are the 5 vrittis. So I just kind of wanted to lay that foundation. So we have what Patanjali said yoga is, which is yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. And then we talked about the 5 vrittis, or the 5 formations that thoughts or the mind can take, which are these 5 right here. All right, yeah, we talked about the blind man and the elephant. All right. So anybody have any questions or comments so far before we move on?
Actually, I do have one question. I wanted you to go over the excerpt that you gave for the first one, right cognition. I kind of missed the explanation.
Okay.
Yeah, that
right
was
cognition.
that was
the
my
same
question
you had?
too. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So right cognition is proof of information to be valid according to our beliefs, experiences, and morals. It's allowing the mind to believe something is firmly right. And so I gave the example, if I have a pen and I ask you what color the pen is, and you verify that the pen is black. So I say the pen is black, you say the pen is black, that's right cognition. We used our senses, we verified reality that this pen is black. So that's right cognition.
How can that be a British, a Brita?
Because it's a modification of the mind. So
Oh,
the pen was a stimulus for a thought, and then you verify the thought using the senses. So that's what makes it a vritti.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else questions before we move on? All right. So we're gonna take a step back now. So I just wanted to kind of lay that foundation. So now you have an idea. So when we use the word yoga, we know what it is now. Yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. We got an idea. That's the foundation of yoga. All right. So this is the origin of the word yoga. So the literal definition of yoga is to yoke. The Sanskrit word for yoke is yuj, Y-U-J. And that's a physical device used to join cattle. They are big and heavy and strong. What they were yoking long ago were war horses. Yoga was both the device and the technique to calm the horses down so that they could focus them and do the work of war. If you couldn't control them, then they weren't useful. So this is a picture of an actual yoke that they used to tie horses together. So one horse would be on one side, one horse would be on the other side. And then they would have a chain or a rope right in the middle so they can control the horses. So that's the origin of the word yoga, and it means to yoke. All right. So we're laying the foundation out of yoga, where yoga comes from. So first we start with the Rig Veda. So yoga in the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is the oldest and most revered and most important of the 4 Vedas. The Rig Vedas are a collection of inspired hymns and mantras and they were used to invoke courage, happiness, health, peace, prosperity, success, and wisdom. In the Rig Veda, we learned the now famous Gayatri mantra, which is still used today for its potent spiritual qualities. And I know we have some yoga teachers on this call tonight, and I know, or I'm pretty sure you should be familiar with the Gayatri mantra. So that's where the Gayatri mantra came from, was the Rig Veda. We also find the first use and the definition of the word yoga. These verses provide the foundation and the material for the Vedas. The Vedas, meaning knowledge, are the oldest texts in Hinduism. They begin as an oral tradition that was passed down through generations before being written down in Vedic Sanskrit. The Vedas were said to have been revealed by sages or rishis while in deep meditation. So, and this was actually a very important piece too, because you know, it says it was an oral tradition that was passed down through generations before being written down. So people memorized these, you know, all four Vedas, and it was passed down from mouth to ear. So it was actually considered a degeneration when they wrote these scripts down, because it meant, you know, it kind of signified that our minds are not as strong and sharp as our predecessors. So they didn't have to write stuff down, so why should we? So when this stuff started being written down, it you know, was considered a degeneration. But lucky for us that it was written down, because if it wasn't, it was relegated to a certain demographic. So it being written down allowed it now to pass around, you know, so now we got our hands on it. All right, and this basically just reiterated what we just said right here. All right, this is yoga in the Rig Veda continued. So yoga is primarily a spiritual discipline that concentrates on the subtle science that focuses on achieving harmony between an individual's mind and body. According to the yogic scriptures, the practice of yoga leads an individual to the union of consciousness with that of universal consciousness. It eventually leads to a great harmony between the human mind and body, man and nature. So remember, we said that yoga means to yoke, right? So we have individual consciousness on one side, and we have universal consciousness on the other side. So those are the two things that we're yoking together via the action of yoga. All right. Can somebody read this quote for me by Deepak Chopra?
I got it. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I'm gonna read it.
Okay, go ahead.
The Rig Veda defines yoga as a union or yoking of the material and spiritual worlds, and it doesn't describe any physical postures other than the traditional cross-legged meditation pose.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big piece too, because most of the time, you know, if you ask people what is yoga, they think about postures, asanas, stretching, stuff like that. But what people don't know is that the stretching and the postures were only implemented to allow people to sit in meditation and be comfortable. So they found that when they went to sit in meditation, they were having, you know, gas, aches, pains, stomach aches, you know, different things like that. So they developed the postures to cleanse the body, as well as prepare them to physically sit for meditation for a long period of time. And so the physical postures came later, after this particular you know, yoga was implemented already. So the physical postures just allow for people to sit in meditation for a long time. And so the example that I want to give is that if you go and you cook a large meal, but you never sit down to eat the meal, that's the equivalent of only practicing the physical postures without the spirituality and the philosophy and the action that comes with what actual yoga is. All right, anybody have any questions or comments so far up to this point? I don't want to go too fast or give you too much, but I just really want to lay the foundation.
Instructor.
Yep.
Could you mention that last part again? You said if one was to practice yoga strictly postures only. Could you explain that, please? Unfold that.
Yep. So the physical postures were implemented to allow a person to sit in meditation for long periods of time and be comfortable in that. And so they found that in sitting in meditation, they would experience like, you know, gastrointestinal discomfort. So that's where the forward bend pose came from, to clear the gas out of the stomach so the stomach can be empty and it won't be bubbling up while they're sitting down doing meditation. Or like the downward dog, for example. People had discomfort in their lower back while being seated in meditation. So they develop, downward dog, or, cow's pose and things like that to strengthen the physical body to allow it to sit for a long time in meditation without being uncomfortable.
So the other part of the physical posture is the Veda, which
Yep, here we are right here, yep.
Yeah, which is knowledge imparted while in a seated position or while in a meditative position, or being allowed to being in a seated or meditative position for long periods of time. Is that correct?
Exactly, yep. So, this slide basically talks about what you just said right here. So, Veda is knowledge and yoga is its practice. They are two sides of the same truth. Yoga not only leads us to Veda, but also expresses it. Veda embodies itself through yoga as its manifestation. The practice of Vedic knowledge is yoga, meaning integration and unification of our individual being with the Supreme Self. Vedic knowledge of our true nature as pure consciousness beyond all limitations of time and space naturally brings us yoga, or harmony and oneness with all at the core of our nature. So yeah, exactly what you just said. The Veda is the foundation, and then putting that foundation into practice is yoga.
Instructor?
Yep.
Yeah, what this is bringing up for me is a quote that I saw you had posted on Facebook. You said, when the mind is silent, the soul will speak. Would that be applicable to the concept of a Veda?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point and a great quote. Thank you for that.
For sure. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So before we go on to the Bhagavad Gita, does anybody have any other questions about the Vedas or the Rig Veda, or the definition of yoga, or the vrittis, or anything like that.
Now, instructor, before we move further, when you talk about Veda, is that a general term, or does it convey to a specific body of knowledge?
Yeah, it's a specific body of knowledge. So particularly, there are 4 Vedas, but the Rig Veda is the oldest one, and that is the first one to mention the word yoga. So it is definitely a body of knowledge. And remember we said that it began as an oral tradition passed down through generations. And the Vedas were revealed to sages and rishis while in deep meditation. So pretty much how the Vedas came about was that these mystics or rishis or sages, whatever we want to call them, they would go into deep meditation and then they would come back, so to speak, from the meditation with this particular knowledge. And then that knowledge was then passed to the lay people, and then they would, use that knowledge for different things. So like, mantras are in the Vedas, different rituals, things like that. And so, yeah, that's basically, where the Vedas come in at. It's 4 Vedas, but the one that we are talking about is the Rig Veda, because that's the oldest, and that was the first one to mention the word yoga.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Yep, I appreciate you all for staying on here too. Definitely appreciate it. I know this is a lot of information, a lot of new information, but hopefully it's being conveyed in such a way that it is interesting and makes you want to learn more about these things. Put in a lot of time and energy into studying this stuff, so hopefully it's conveyed in such a way that it's meaningful to you like it is to me.
Instructor, if I may.
Yep. I'm not sure who that is. I know Hero, you go first, and then whoever else goes second.
Oh, thank you, instructor. So the what is there any value to the other Vedas?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a lot of value. So this is the thing, like, with preparing for this class, like, it's so much information that I didn't want to overwhelm anybody with all of this stuff. Like, it's probably a lot already, but this is like the simplest that I can get it down to, and still have, and still give the correct takeaway. So it's definitely very much value in the other ones as well. But yeah, I didn't want to mention them all because I didn't want to overwhelm you with Sanskrit terms and all of this kind of stuff. I just wanted to mention it for a specific point to show the origin and the foundation of where we're going with yoga.
Instructor, instructor, if I may. The Rig Veda. I noticed when you scroll back up, because I missed the definition or translation of Rig, and it said praise. So this is the praise Veda. Can you okay, I see it now. That are in praise of higher power. Can you thus the Rig Vedas are the collection of hymns that are in praise of higher power. Okay, I was just trying to get a better understanding of what the Rig and the Vedas together meant, considering this is one of the 4 specifics.
So this answer your question right here, right?
Yeah, so it's like
knowledge of higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Making reference to praising. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right. Anybody else? Any questions before we go on to the Bhagavad Gita? All right. So in this particular picture, we see Arjuna and we see Krishna. All right. So the Bhagavad Gita, that's another book. So that book is a part of a larger book called the Mahabharata, which is a detailed exposition of a war that took place. And so the Bhagavad Gita is just a part of the larger Mahabharata. And the Mahabharata is the longest epic, that is known to humanity. So you can see how much stuff this is, but we're only going to take a small piece of it. All right, so yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the story concerns a young prince, Arjuna, a deeply spiritual person who is also a member of the Kshatriya, or the warrior caste. He has found himself in the middle of a battle, which he believes is just won, a battle against the forces of evil. The problem is that there are members of his family, his teachers, his friends on the other side of the battlefield. He feels he has to fight for good to prevail in the world. But surely doing violence to his relatives is unethical and spiritually harmful. So it's a lose-lose situation. This conflict can serve as a metaphor for many things, but one of them is the tension between spiritual life and worldly life. So how does one live in a world of karma, which is best translated as action, with all of his attachments, distractions, and contradictions while still seeking knowledge of the higher self? Well, luckily, his chariot driver is God, or an avatar of God to be precise. And I want to give you a definition of what the word avatar means. So an avatar is a fully liberated master who returns to earth to fulfill a special divine mission. And that's what Paramahansa Yogananda said an avatar is. So if you think of Jesus, Buddha, people like that, those would be, people who are liberated, but they return to earth to fulfill a mission. And so, and this makes sense to me, and I'm sure it should make sense to everybody else, that if you see any form of God, it has to be some representation of God. Because if something is infinite, all powerful, all knowing, all of that kind of stuff, there is no way you would be able to perceive such a being. So whatever, pictorial view that you see of God, it has to be a lesser form than what God is. And so in this particular case, we have an avatar of God, or Krishna. Krishna is an incarnation of the god Vishnu, and he lays out for him the three paths of yoga, all of which can lead to spiritual liberation. So we have Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Jnana Yoga is a path of philosophical inquiry and reflection, and it emphasizes meditation, study, and introspection. Bhakti Yoga is a path of love and devotion, and it emphasizes worship, prayer, and chanting. And Karma Yoga is the path of work and service. It's all about using your action in the world as a tool for awakening and using the results of those actions, your livelihood, to serve others as an offering to the divine. So I know it was a lot in there, but now we get to see the distinctions of what we call or what we deem as yoga, right? So we got Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. So those are the three paths that are laid out in the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna, Arjuna, and Krishna showed or told Arjuna that these are the three paths that can lead to spiritual liberation: Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. All right, anybody have any questions or comments so far? Anything about the Bhagavad Gita?
Yes, instructor. I have a comment about the jhana, the bhakti, and the karma yoga. What it's making me think of is Carl Jung's representation of the archetypes and their shadows, being the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. A king being an embodiment of all three of the archetypes, the lover being someone that's more meditative and very positive and loving and enthralled in life, the magician being someone that understands the deeper knowledge and ways of that the universe works and uses that to manifest the reality. And the warrior is the one that goes out, faces challenges, uses tools, and takes action. So each one representing, well, the magician being contemplation and thinking, the warrior being action, and the lover being, I guess, general peace, love, and happiness. So I find that interesting that those are the three paths to yoga, and yoga being, well, I guess, that yogi state, that king-like state where you're embodying the actions that you take. You have control over how you're feeling towards things, you're being loving and positive and peaceful, as well as studying the world and still being reflective and introspective. That's my oh, thank you, I appreciate it. That's my reflection of that. Thank you.
Yep, he was definitely well studied in Hindu philosophy. So you were right on point with that particular comparison. Yeah, you'll be surprised who got their information from where. So yeah, thank you for that.
I find that interesting, where a lot of things, they say this person founded this concept or whatever, but then when you look at their studies, it's like they didn't really found anything, because they didn't really do that same work. They might have talked to people, but they were also studying other things. And so it's interesting to find where everything comes from, but that's not what's shown to us. So we have a misconception, or what do we call it? We have a viparyaya, a misconception of who the heroes are and who's the one that's doing the work and learning these things and doing the study and the research.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for that. We definitely appreciate it. Anybody else questions or comments?
Yes, sir. I had a quick question, instructor. Peace and love, everyone. Is there any specific significance as to the term, why it's karma, bhakti, and jnana?
Yeah. So we gonna go into that, but so this, even though it's spelled Jnan, it's pronounced Gyana, Jnana Yoga, and you'll see that same root in gnosis, or Gnosticism, meaning like knowledge. And so you see that this is the path of philosophical inquiry or reflection. Karma exactly means action or work. And bhakti, we got, I'll show you where that one goes to, because we're going to go into all of these. And just a little precursor, the subsequent classes are going to go into each of these specific types of yoga. So next week we got karma yoga, The week after that, we have Bhakti Yoga. The week after that, we have Jnana Yoga. And then the last week, we have Raja Yoga. So we're going to go into all 4 of those. And then week 6 is just going to be a conclusion of all of these particular yogas or schools of thought. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Anybody else? Questions, comments? All right, we move forward. So this is where we started with Patanjali and Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So he laid down his, systematic approach to yoga. And somebody asked about what the sutra means. So sutra just means thought thread. So the classic sutras are at least 2,500 years old, and they cover yogic teachings on ethics, meditation, physical postures, and provide direction for dealing with situations in daily life. And this is another thing too, about the physical postures piece. So the Yoga Sutras are 100 and I believe some people say 196, some people say 198. So we're gonna go between there. At least 196 to 198 sutras, and it is 1,200 words long, and only 12 words are dedicated to physical postures. So exactly 1%. So 1% of yoga is the physical posture. And so, which brings me back to my analogy earlier about cooking food but not eating it. So, a lot of people, we just stop at the physical postures, but we never go further to actually, get to the essence or the heart of what yoga actually is. We only stick with that 1%. All right, so Patanjali laid out what's called the 8 limbs of yoga, or Ashtanga yoga, or Raja yoga. All right. So you see that in the Bhagavad Gita, we laid out Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga. And so Patanjali comes with the systematic 8 limbs or Ashtanga yoga in his Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Right. So Ashtanga is translated as 8 limbs. Ashta means 8. Anga means limbs or division. So we start with the first limb right here, which is yama, or the principles of ethics. And those are the moral observances that help you to be in harmony with the environment that you find yourself in. So we're going to go through all of these when we get to the Raja Yoga lecture. But you see, we have nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, continence, and non-possessiveness in Yama. So those are the ethical principles that allow you to be in harmony with your environment. And then the second one is Niyama. So Niyama are the moral observances that help you to be in harmony with self. So this is external environment and this is self environment. So it's also 5 of these as well. So we got cleanliness, contentment, austerity, self-study, and surrender to a higher power. So those are niyama. So these are the 2 moral observances, one for the external environment, and then one for the internal environment. And then once we, loosely stated, master those things, now we are ready for posture or asana. And this is the physical postures that people, practice as, the physical, modern physical yoga or hatha yoga. Right here is the postures. So asana helps you to understand the body and develop an awareness of the body. And then next we have pranayama. which is energy regulation or control over the life forces. So once you develop an awareness of the body, then you develop an awareness and control, control, and regulation of the life force energy or the vital energy. So us, most of us that are on this call are martial artists, and we talk a lot about chi or ki, and so this is just controlling of that. So you see this word yama, 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 which basically is control. And so we have control over the prana or control over the chi, if you want to call it that, but control over the vital energy, the life force energy. And then after we do all of those things, then we come to pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs, so when a man withdraws his senses from sense objects, his wisdom becomes steady. So sense objects are just anything that you encounter or take in through the senses. So any sound, any sight, anything like that is all sense objects. So even though pratyahara is defined as withdrawal from the senses, the word breaks down into ahara, meaning food, and prati, meaning away. So food is anything that we take from the outside and bring to our inside. The senses feed the mind constantly with information. So pratyahara is the withdrawal of that, of our senses, taking in things from the outside world. So notice we haven't even got to meditation yet. All of these things should be happening before we even get to meditation. So that should be some kind of clue to everybody. So next is dharana, which is concentration. So dharana is about fixing the mind on one specific point. And when we focus the mind intensely, the rest of the mind tends to quiet down. So dharana is an important step on our way to the next step, which is meditation. So you see how this thing kind of stacks up like a pyramid? Well, these are the 8 limbs of yoga. And the last one is samadhi, or self-realization. And I actually have a definition of samadhi for you to see. So samadhi is a deep, thoughtless meditation, but it is still in the domain of the mind. It's silencing the mind, but not permanently. So that's the key, that is not permanent. Whereas on the other hand, we have moksha, which is the permanent transcendence over the mind and the body. So those are the two sides of the coin. So samadhi is not permanent, and moksha is permanent. Oh, my bad. All right. So any questions up to that point? So we talked about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. We talked about the Bhagavad Gita. We talked about the Rig Veda, origins of yoga, chitta vritti, all of that. Anybody have any questions, comments so far? All right, no questions or comments. We're gonna move on. So this is the last piece that we're gonna talk about is yoga in the Upanishad. So the Yoga Upanishad, which actually come from the Vedas. So inside of the Vedas are the Upanishad, And there are 20 yoga Upanishads inside of the 4 Vedas. So the Yoga Upanishads discuss different aspects and kinds of yoga, ranging from postures, breath, exercises, meditation, sound, tantra, and others. Some of these topics are not covered in the Bhagavad Gita or the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So you see how, we draw from different things in order to create a complete picture of what yoga is. So that's why we have to go to these different texts to get a complete or full picture of what yoga actually is. So this is the Upanishads. So the Upanishads are a part of Vedanta, which means the last part of the Vedas. The Upanishads contain revealed truth or Shruti about Brahman or God, the ultimate reality and the way of liberation or moksha. That's what we just talked about, conversely with samadhi. The term Upanishad derives from upa, meaning nearby, ni, meaning at the proper place or down, and side or shad, which means to sit. And it means sitting near a teacher to receive the sacred teaching. So you kind of get the idea about, they weren't too keen about writing stuff down. A lot of this stuff was passed from mouth to ear, from teacher to student. So you had to have that sacred relationship with a teacher before you could actually receive a lot of this stuff. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, let me go to Barnes and Noble and buy a book about the Upanishad. That's 2021 stuff. That's new age stuff. That's not how it was passed down. So the goal of the Upanishads is to make you realize that you are Brahman or God, to loosen the bonds of samsara, which is wandering change or the journey of a soul. So this is that constant cycle of death, rebirth, coming back. And then the third piece is it destroys ignorance. So Vedanta, anta meaning the end or the last portion of the Vedas, is the essence and culmination of all of the knowledge within the Vedas. So basically, it's like a summary. The Vedas, Ved meaning to know, knowledge of the eternal truth. The Upanishads, most of all, are the record of what sages and seers perceived in thought and vision, and are not organized systems of philosophy. So remember, Patanjali was the one who came and organized it and put it into, this clean, nice formula with the 8 limbs. But the Upanishads is, it's a conglomeration of a lot of different things, but it's not organized like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. They have elucidated the most important questions of human existence. The collection of Sanskrit texts known as the Upanishads are thought to be the direct teachings received at the foot of the ancient Indian sages or rishis. The Upanishads deal with the disciplines of philosophical knowledge, which is jnana, divine love, which is bhakti, and action, which is karma. And they express the same truths as the Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutra. All right, so that's the Upanishads. So why are we doing all of this yoga stuff? What's the point? So the point is that us as human beings living on planet Earth, we experience suffering, right? If you're a human, you're going to suffer at some point in life. Number 2, we don't know who we are. Number 3, attachment, clinging to things that are impermanent and having expectations. And I know everybody can attest to that, how this one thing right here causes a whole lot of suffering for a whole lot of people. Clinging to things that are impermanent and having expectations. And we call that attachment. And that causes a whole lot of suffering. Number 4 is aversion, which means we are attempting to avoid things. We want pleasure. We don't want pain. We don't want heartache. We don't want, a lot of stuff. We don't want to be broke. So aversion. So attachment is one side, and then aversion is the other side. Number 5 is identifying with the ego, which probably 99.9% of the population does. And the last piece is the fear of death. So this is why we are having this conversation about yoga, because of all of these things that we just laid out. Suffering, not knowing who we are, attachment, aversion, identifying with the ego, fear of death. I feel like somebody has a question or a comment. Go ahead, please. Come on, you can talk. This is a safe space.
Instructor, this is Kenyatta. How you doing? Peace, everybody. First of all, I just appreciate this review, man. I haven't gone here in a minute. Just the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita. This is a great review of like the basic foundations of yoga. So this is awesome. You mentioned why yoga, and I'm just looking at that number 2 question, just not knowing who we are. According to yoga, what is the point of that? Like, so what would be the answer to that question? Like, who we are? Yeah. So,
as they say, tune in next week to find out.
Got him.
Good game.
Oh, okay.
So that's gonna be the basis of this whole entire thing. So we're gonna get to that.
Okay. Salute. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate you. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Peace, instructor.
Peace.
Something that's coming to me, or what came to me, is that, or how I'm putting it together, I guess better stated, how I've been putting this together in my mind, is that yoga seems to me is like an ancient operating system for accessing, maintaining, and upgrading your mental, spiritual, and emotional software. If we were using a computer metaphor.
That's actually great. Couldn't have said it better myself. That was excellent.
Okay. Yeah, that's major. What you share, and everything that you have shared about the Rig Vedas, the Veda, the Bhagavad Gita, how all these parts fit together, and what using them allows you to access. It's like you talking about plugging your mind back into the universal, the universal everything, like the source of knowledge, the source of knowing, the source of power, the source of senses, and being able to, interpret those things. It's like this is really looking like, it seemed a little complex in the beginning, but just, as I'm looking through my notes, I'm like, it looks like a very elegant operating system.
Yeah, man. I did my best to make it not complex, because it's like a whole lot of stuff. And so
yeah,
I pride myself on being able to take a bunch of information and put it together in a nice, neat package and present it. So definitely the goal of this is to take a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of knowledge and text and ancient this and that and put it all together in one nice, neat package for everybody to take away. Some
I
stuff.
have a question, instructor.
Hold on 1 second. Were you done, Hero?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm gonna be chewing on this for a while. Thank you, instructor.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, go ahead, John.
Yeah, my question is, I was looking at the dates: 500 BCE, 1400 century, 1300 century. It seems to me that humans have had a problem with large egos and fighting their egos for since the beginning of time. And I'm wondering, I'm trying to figure out, why is that such a buildup of ego with men, women, and warriors and regular people alike? I'm trying to understand, why does it grow out of and gets out of balance and out of check so quickly? But they had to come up with a system with over 8 billion different ways to manage it and meditate and stand its way. Why did it grow so rapidly and get out of control? That's my question.
You want to know the most basic but profound definition of ego that I've heard in doing this study? It says the ego is the soul or the spirit identifying as the body. That's what ego is. And so, just take yourself, for example. From birth, people say, "This is John." And so you've taken your physical body as, "I am John." Nobody can tell you anything different. And so that statement of "I am this thing" is ego, and is not a bad or a good thing. It's just that's the fact of the situation. So we express ourselves as if we are the body. So I am hungry, I am cold, I am hot, et cetera, et cetera. So that particular ideology has been around since the beginning of human existence. So of course it would be, something to overcome, because we've been identifying incorrectly as the body for a long time. And, it wasn't until these sages and, people even thought to go into these deep meditative experiences to come out with the information to say, "Oh yeah, you're not the body." But, for a long period of time, humanity, we've been living to survive. And so the question that I pose is, what is surviving? And that thing that is surviving is the ego. Right. So I'm saying that to say that we haven't even been at a point where we can ideate something other than being the ego, because we haven't had the tools to do so. But now we do. We have the tools and we have the environment, because we don't have to outrun tigers, and we don't have to go hunt to live and pick berries, that kind of thing. Like, we have the environment and the tools to be able to self-realize and self-actualize something other than us as ego. But that's something, relatively new in the span of human existence.
Instructor Sunray had her hand up.
Yep, I see it. Did you catch all that, John? Hope it wasn't too convoluted.
Yeah, it it got me where I was going. It took a little minute, but I get what you're saying because it's deeper than free lunch. They want you to eat, but what are you eating, basically? They have the power to destroy and the power to rebuild. But what do we choose? What would you choose? What are your options? Because you have so many. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. Right now?
Peace and love, everyone. I wanted to say first that I appreciate this presentation because it was just very accessible, and like the amount of content that you shared. At first, like I felt like I was a little dissuaded, or I was a little like intimidated by the phrases, the words and stuff. I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to remember this, and then just having to catch myself and then like literally just take what you're given. And you explained everything so well, so it was easy to follow. What stood out to me most on this call was the perspective of the story with the 6 people in the elephant. That's just that was just really profound for me. And the second thing like that I started thinking about throughout this is just how expansive and how you're saying like we hadn't even really touched the surface of it. And this week I was watching like this new anime on the story of Yasuke, and I was thinking about how in Avatar, when you gave the definition of what Avatar is, how we've been given like little Easter eggs, and how we've been given like little Easter eggs in shows that kind of give you just a very shallow kind of introduction to it, but how yoga is so much more. And now I'm just thinking about, well, how yoga is very simple, but you can just go into it forever. So I'm just really excited about the calls to come up next, and just want to say thanks.
Oh yeah, thank you, and I'm definitely glad that you're here because I'm not sure if you remember, but we had a conversation in the dojo, and I asked you what yoga was, and you were saying it was stretching and stuff like that. So I was like, yeah, make sure you tune in because I want, I know that your sentiment is the sentiments of a whole lot of other people. And, I definitely wanted you to be here and get this information. So that way, it'll make life easier and it'll also make quote unquote afterlife easier as well. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else questions or comments before we move on?
I have a couple comments. First off, I want to say what you guys were saying about the ego. I found that very profound, and it makes me even wonder, do other animals have to deal with this issue of the ego? But I was internalizing this information and also reflecting on my morning meditation today. As a massage therapist, let my clients know the ultimate goal of the massage is for their body to get the most healing as possible. And the best way for that to be achieved is for them relaxing their body as much as possible. So I can feel the natural tightness of their muscles and when they're misaligned, but also because that relaxation brings the massage itself will bring their brain waves down to alpha where they're in a more calm, relaxed state. But the goal is to bring them to theta and delta so that their brain can start secreting the human growth hormone and healing can actually take place in their body. So bringing them to a state of delta, and you described it here as the 5 virtues, I would consider that nidra to be the delta state. And knowing that, we're healing our bodies when we're in that state, I think what was it you said, muksha, the permanent state of internal silence, but you're still aware of what's going on. That being the goal, because our bodies, with that human growth hormone, we're staying in a healed space. This morning meditation, I was practicing that, and I was really focusing on relaxing my body as much as possible and just letting my mind do whatever it's doing because it's always doing something. But I was feeling the resistance as I was going deeper into the natural awareness of my body. And I was, that fear of death, that, fear of feeling pain or something itchy, or that resistance to feeling nauseated, that feeling in my stomach. I felt a lot of resistance, but the more I got into my body, the more in one with myself and my surroundings and the universe that I was able to feel. That's my reflection from today and from what I'm getting from the class so far and applying it to my work.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. And I definitely appreciate the direct applicability of, this information to what you do. So, that is the crux of how we make this information ours, is by applying it to our real life. And so, as Instructor Vaughn said several times in his class, knowledge without reflection is useless. So, reflecting on it and then implementing it is how we, take a hold of this information and make it ours. So definitely appreciate that.
Mm.
All
How
right.
I'm
Anybody
seeing
else?
it. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Oh, I thought you was doing. Anybody else? All right. So nobody else. So we are. So now we have the foundation of the 4 paths of yoga. And so it's going to be some repetition because I want you all to get it. So, repetition is the mother of knowledge. So again, yoga manifests itself as 4 paths, namely karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, and jnana yoga. These 4 paths are like branches of the tree. They all have the same source and resting place. In essence, they are all the same. The only thing that differentiates them is that there is a particular aspect of the mind involved in a particular path or practice. So in karma yoga, the active aspect of the mind is involved. In bhakti yoga, the emotional aspect. In raja yoga, the mystical aspect. So Chris, remember you said the magician, that's the raja yoga path, the mystical aspect. And jnana yoga is the intellectual aspect. So we got this thing right here, karma yoga, the path of selfless service. Bhakti yoga is the path of devotion. Jnana yoga, the path of knowledge. And Raja yoga is the path of controlling the mind, or the path of concentration. So I thought this was a great example right here of all of the paths all leading to the same point or the same goal. So you can choose one path exclusively depending on your personality. So we got bhakti, raja, jnana, karma, but they all lead to the same place. All right. So karma yoga. Karma yoga is the path of unselfish action. It teaches that the spiritual seeker should act according to dharma. And dharma designates human behavior considered necessary for order of things in the universe, principles that prevent chaos, behaviors, and actions necessary to all life in nature, society, as well as at the individual level. Dharma encompasses ideas such as duty, rights, character, vocation, religion, customs, and all behavior considered appropriate, correct, or morally upright. So when we use the word dharma, that's what it encompasses. So the seeker should act according to dharma without being attached to the fruits or personal consequences. Karma yoga states, the Bhagavad Gita purifies the mind. It leads one to consider dharma of work and the work according to one's dharma, doing God's work, and in the sense becoming and being like unto God in every moment of one's life. So in these paths, they all represent a solution to a problem, right? So the karma yogi says the problem is selfishness. So I want this, I want that, I want cars and money, etc., etc. So selfishness is the problem. So the answer to selfishness is karma yoga. The bhakti yogi says that selfishness with and possessiveness is the problem. So, you know, my wife, my children, et cetera, like I want these particular things or objects of my love and devotion. So bhakti yoga is the answer to that. The Jnana Yoga says, or the Jnana Yogi says the problem is ignorance. So the knowledge is the answer. And the Raja Yogi says a scattered mind is the problem, and Raja Yoga is the answer or the solution. So all of these particular paths set out to solve a particular problem. So we talked about karma yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga, also commonly known as the path of devotion, teaches that moksha, which we already talked about, which is permanent transcendence over the mind-body world. So remember we said that was permanent. So moksha is achieved by means of selfless and utter devotion, love, and trust towards a particular deity. Those on the path of devotion often listen to stories about God, sing devotional hymns, recite mantras, worship at temples and shrines at the home, and undergo pilgrimages in hopes of becoming closer to God. The word bhakti is made up of two parts. The root bhaj, meaning service, and katir, meaning love. So love service is bhakti yoga, and that's the yoga of love and devotion. So we got the yoga of action, got the yoga of love and devotion. Next, we got the path of knowledge or intellect. So jnana is a Sanskrit term for knowledge or wisdom. And jnana yoga is the path of attaining knowledge of the true nature of reality through the practice of meditation, self-inquiry, and contemplation. Jnana yoga can be defined as the awareness of absolute consciousness. In jnana yoga, the mind is used to inquire into its own nature and to transcend the mind's identification with its thoughts and ego. The fundamental goal of jnana yoga is to become liberated from the illusory world of Maya. So that's big. The fundamental goal of jnana yoga is to become liberated from the illusory world of Maya. And Maya is self-limiting thoughts and perceptions, so i.e. illusion. And to achieve the union of the inner self and or the inner self with the oneness of all life. So Atman and Brahman. So remember, we go back to this picture, this yoke. So Atman on one side, which is the individual self, and Brahman on the other side, which is all pervading consciousness. So the union of those two things is the goal of jnana yoga. This is achieved by steadfastly practicing the mental techniques of self-questioning, reflection, and conscious illumination that are defined in the four pillars of knowledge. Jnana yoga utilizes a one-pointed meditation on a single question of self-inquiry to remove the veils of illusion created by your concepts, worldviews, and perceptions. This practice allows you to utilize the temporary and illusory nature of Maya and see the oneness of all things. And that's Jnana Yoga. And the last one that we talked about is Raja Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. Raja is the royal path of yoga, which is very scientific and thorough. By following this path methodically, we learn to refine our desires, emotions, and thoughts, as well as the subtle impressions and thoughts that lie dormant in the unconscious mind. Raja Yoga helps us to experience the inner reality by means of the 8-rung ladder or 8 steps. The ultimate goal is for the aspirant to attain the 8th rung, samadhi. So we had the 8 limbs right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the last one is samadhi or enlightenment or self-realization. That's the last piece of the 8 limbs of yoga, which is also Raja Yoga. All right. Questions, comments. It is now 9:36. So anybody have any questions or comments? Talked about a lot. I know hopefully it wasn't overwhelming. Hopefully it wasn't too much. I know it was a lot of Sanskrit, but you know, did my best. So anybody have any questions, comments?
I would say this just really got me pretty excited to learn more about yoga itself and get deeper
Yeah,
into
me
the
too.
philosophy of it. It was real cool learning the different forms of it and learning that it's multiple roads to take.
Mhm. I think for me, like basically, I was at a point where I was looking at yoga just from a physical like standpoint. So to see how deep it goes, or to just see that the physical part of it that's not even the beginning. Like you have passed the most important parts of it. So that for me, that was just like the 8 limbs of wait, let me go back to my notes. I know the 8 limbs of yoga. Like to me, that was like the most like part that hit me the most. Because it's like, whoa, here I am in the physical part, and there's so much more before it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry, my bad. For me, I think that the part I took away the most is like a lot of people fear, well, I won't say fear, but they have a misunderstanding or conception that like when you study the different like meanings behind stuff, that it's like you praising a God when really it's more self-reflection and realizing that God is within you. And so like I think that like learning a lot of the different meanings behind everything, it actually makes so like it's not, you're not ignorant about the subject. So I'm happy that we're breaking it down like this so that people can kill the illusion of whatever they have, because it's deeper than that.
Exactly. Yep. Appreciate that. Somebody else? Questions, comments?
Good evening. This is Randy. Can you hear me?
Peace. Yep. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure because my video wouldn't come on. I'm very interested about the topic at hand. Indian Sanskrit is like not normal language where I come from, and the only way I been turned on to it a little bit is by like watching like shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff like that, and they talk about the Maharabata, and that was the first mention that I heard about these flying saucers, these Brahmanas, and so forth. So I've always been interested. Now talking about the 4 paths of yoga, speaking about 8, kind of like the 8-fold path and the levels to it. I've always been interested in these Indians. Like they actually amaze me. Their buildings like Angkor Wat. But in reference to yoga, these poses that they make, unlike the Egyptians and Maya, these poses are something else, you know, with their legs crossed and the way that they move their arms and the multiple arms and the way that they hold their hands is something that I've always been interested in. So unlike us learning the Asian route, getting into like Chinese and Japanese because of the nature of the martial arts. I'm very interested and excited that we're tapping into this here. So I appreciate it, instructor.
Oh yeah, I appreciate you. And dang, I was just about to say I appreciate everybody saying no too, because we pretty much, my goal for this class was 50 people. And I think we had 53. We got 50 now. Somebody just must have left and came back. But you know, we've sustained 50 people through this whole thing. So definitely appreciate you all sticking it out and staying here and really being as excited as I am about this, knowledge and information. I literally been eating, sleeping, breathing yoga for the past how many every week. So hopefully my zeal for the subject comes out in this particular presentation. Yeah, anybody else got questions, comments?
I
Yes.
have a comment.
Go ahead, sister.
Peace, family. I'm very excited about this lesson. I've always wanted to learn more about yoga, and I had the same perception of it just being poses and meditation and breathing. And I didn't know how deep it really got, like the layers of yoga, especially the words and the meaning behind the words. And also I'm excited because the picture that you have on the screen right now is something that I saw in my ayahuasca ceremony. And I think that it's always been something that probably was caught for me to understand, just even experiencing that and seeing that in my ayahuasca ceremony. So I'm just excited. I wrote down a lot of notes, and yeah, I'm grateful and I'm thankful for you to be able to teach this to us and share it with us.
Oh yeah, no problem. And it's being recorded too. So if anybody wants to go back and check out anything, rewind, fast forward, pause, you can do that as well. So yeah, thank you. Anybody else questions, comments? Still got a few minutes left. But all I have is to give out the homework. So if you have anything, people can speak now.
Yes, instructor. First I want to say, I speak for everybody when I say I'm very grateful for the dedication that you have brought here. This is something that I can tell you're very passionate about, and the dedication you've been putting in for the past couple of weeks until you can present these things to us is highly appreciated. So I'll make sure I bring my best feet when I come to these classes and get my notebook ready. A lot of the things that I've studied and learned about, as you're just talking with this first video, I'm noticing the connection to yoga from these other things. So this is definitely deep in the roots of a lot of things that we see in our society that just like sister said, like just little Easter eggs coming to us. Um, a question I have is, later on in the series, will we go over the story of Brahma and Maya? I noticed both of them were mentioned during the video. Will at some point the story between those two be will we dive into that area?
Yep, yeah, we will.
Excellent. That's all I got. Thank you, instructor. And we're all
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, always thank you. I appreciate you and appreciate your willingness to be an amazing participant. So that's always appreciated.
I just wanted to show my gratitude towards you, instructor, for sharing your gifts with us. You have this knack for taking like just a large amount of information and making it so digestible and so easy to apply to daily life, especially really dense stuff. So even when you're looking at yoga and you're self-studying it, it's so dense and there's so much information. And the way that you break things down really assists with that. So I thank you for sharing your gifts with us. I think my largest takeaway today was something that I never got out of self-study, which is how yoga is broken up into all these different paths. But no matter which path you take, like there's no way to take one path completely and not fulfill the other paths at the same time. And the way that you broke down how those paths are fulfilled in a train of thought for each one really brought that home for me. And it kind of made me think about like the source of philosophical and religious beliefs overall is that whole search for something, that search for alleviating suffering and things of that nature. Like there's multiple paths to the same thing and all roads lead to meditation, but just your breakdown today really drove that home for me. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's definitely big, is that you can see the interconnectedness between all of them. So even though they are all individual and distinct paths, they all tie into one another. So, you know, bringing it right back to the beginning, all of these are different pieces of the elephant, but it's not the elephant itself. So thank you for making that connection.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
Peace, instructor. Peace, family.
Peace.
I appreciate you for this lesson. It was very informative, this whole origin of yoga. And it kind of reminds me of the Eightfold Path in a sense. Excuse me. Me practicing yoga and just not knowing what I was experiencing during yoga, this really enlightened me in that area. And it reminds me of just being an act of service. It's like an act of praise, an act of worship, and it's a way of living. This whole lesson here, and this is just a little bit of it. It's a whole lot, but I've just taken in a little of it. And it's just reminding me of a way of living. And just taking some of this information and understanding and putting it into what I experience doing yoga and meditation. So I appreciate the lesson and I look forward to the rest of it.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you for that. Appreciate your comment. Anybody else? Questions, comments, anything we want to share before we get to homework? Going once, going twice. All right, here's the homework. It's for everybody. All right, so this is the homework. So we got 4 paths. So we got Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Raja Yoga. So which path matches your particular self-expression and why? And then next week, when we have the class on Karma Yoga, we're going to start with the homework. So we're going to have probably about 5 to 10 people share out about which path you chose and why you chose that path. And that'll be where we'll pick up. So it'll be same time next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll start from there. So, but before we leave here, does any instructor have anything that they like to share? We still have about 12 minutes. So, you know, Instructor Arkul, Instructor Nate, Instructor Vaughn, Instructor Sid, Instructor Ghost, or anybody else, any other instructors that are on the call. If you guys have anything to share, you can go ahead.
I would jump in real quick. Say awesome lesson. I learned a whole lot and I'm going to go back and watch it again. And also I just something I noticed, what you presented today is what we do or what we aspire to do in the dojo. It is very much, from what I saw, the same thing. So I thought that was a powerful correlation and alignment between seemingly 2 different things.
Yep. Yeah. It's all Kempo. Kempo is life. Life is Kempo.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for staying through the whole thing.
Oh, for sure.
I just got to say telepathy, Instructor Cedric, because when the 6 reasons why yoga, all I saw was the generous discipline. And I was
That's the
just,
same thing that hit me, brother. I'm sorry for cutting you
no,
off. Look,
no,
the
no,
same thing.
for sure, for sure. It just lets me know how blessed we are. And for all the listeners and observers that felt the denseness, to use Sister Chanel's word, that was a great word, the denseness of the information. If you want it simplified, get in the dojo. uh, because exactly what Such Instructor Cedric said, that's what we do. And those 6 reasons are put to the test, and we are growing in those areas through the martial arts. So that's one piece. Obviously, Instructor Brother North Leg, man, salute to you, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for the work. This is weeks and weeks of preparation. And so, you know, you started us in this philosophical path, set the bar high. We each climbed the ladder. Instructor Vaughn took it to the next point, and here you go, pushing it further. And I only hope to meet the mark when I get back to the table. And then in closing, um, ignorance. Ignorance is the great enemy. I've been blessed to really have done a 360 in regards to looking into the, you know, many of the various religions, quote unquote religions on the planet, or schools of thought, philosophy, approaches to the same one intent, to find ourselves in God and to find God. And when we grow beyond fear, superstition, and programming, and we get connected to self, and you have that intestinal fortitude that allows you to look at a new concept without fear, without judgment, you open yourself up to see not only how beautiful God is, but learn how to appreciate how other people on the planet view and aspire to reach that same status. Because when it's all said and done, one person's religion, any religion, better stated, comes down to traditions, differences in language, habits, and superstition. And the powers that be have utilized them all to manipulate, control, and deceive the people. So as we grow within ourselves, we move past fear. You can come to information like this with an open mind and an open heart, and you can gain and glean. And all it does is give you more handholds and footrests as we climb the ladder and attempt to reach the Most High through growth within self. So I appreciate you, bro. And I look forward to the journey with you. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. I appreciate you as well. Thank you for that.
Yes, sir. I don't have very much, brother. Just appreciate you, man, taking us on this journey into the philosophy. There's nothing wrong with expanding our knowledge on every philosophy, for that matter, if we have the time and the discipline to do so. So, looking forward to it, brother. I'm here, and thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you. Anybody else?
Brother. Thank you. I can really see and hear the struggle or the challenge is probably a better word. The challenge in having so much information and making this information palatable for consumption. So hats off to you. You've done a brilliant job in that. as always, as you started us all blazing down this trail, and we following behind you, attempting to keep up. And this is another one again that has raised the bar. One thing that stands out to me in this is the the blind man and the elephant. And if the blind men had simply sat down and discussed and shared each of their discoveries, there would not have been an argument as to which one had a truth. They would have realized that they have all, embraced the same body. As with many religions, many different expressions of the one, if we sit down and talk and just reason with one another, we would all find that we were talking about the same entity, the same being, which kind of like illuminated for me how language, a different word, a different symbol makes us think that we're different from each other, when in fact, just in talking and expressing and sharing, we find out that we're all the same. So again, brother, great work. Thank you for making this really easy to grasp. So man, hats off to you, and you've done it again, brother.
Thank you. Just keeping up with you.
No, sir. Keeping up with you, bro. Don't even try. Yeah, I'm keeping up with you. Thank you, man.
Thank you. All right. Well, if nobody has anything, or anybody has anything else for the good of the order, if not, we can call it a night.
Good night, instructor.
Thank you, instructor.
Peace.
Awesome.
Peace, family.
Thank you, instructor.
Peace, family.
Peace.
Peace.